Hey guys, in today's video, we're gonna talk about right side feels for a great backswing. What are you supposed to feel during your backswing with the right side of your body? Let's cover that all now. Hey guys, Eric here at the Bethlehem Golf Club. I want to talk to you today about right side feels for your backswing. Some things you can feel during your backswing to ensure that you make a great backswing. Now, before we dive in, I want to let you guys know how we can work together over the winter months. Since we're all full for in-person coaching, we are accepting new players to CogornoGolf.com. That's how you guys can send me in your swing videos. That's how we can utilize these winter months to improve so you guys are all ready for next spring. Now, as a member of Cogorno Golf, most importantly, you get access to our Facebook group. That's where you can post your swing videos. I'll help you identify your main priorities, give you drills to work on, and guide you through that process. You also get access to everything. You get access to our master classes. You get access to the member library, the quick fix section, and the practice section. So would love to see you guys at CogornoGolf.com. We'll include a link in the description down below. All right, so let's talk about right side feels for a great backswing. Now, what I want to talk about here, we're going to kind of work from the ground up, is how each body segment is supposed to work during the backswing. So always in these feels videos, we're looking for something that can create a good ball pattern, pretty soon. And we're going to supplement things you can feel with things that are real. So, hey, Eric, relative to my right foot or my leg or my hip or my torso, what should I feel on my way back, or what shouldn't I feel? We're going to talk about that. We know feel isn't real, so I'm also going to give you some checkpoints to be able to hit regardless of your feels. But let's dive right into this right side feels for a great backswing. Let's start from the ground up and with your foot. Now, when I take my normal setup position, there's kind of two different things with my foot that we have to talk about. One is where's going to be the pressure in terms of left versus right, meaning am I 50-50 pressure in my feet? Am I 60 left, 40 right? Am I 60 right, 40 left? Where's the pressure in my feet? How does that change? And then we also have the pressure in my feet in terms of toes and heels. Am I moving forward? Am I moving back? And in simple terms, there's really two main focuses in terms of your foot during the backswing. One is going to be, we're definitely going to shift pressure to our right foot. So if I start 50-50 in terms of pressure in my feet, I want to shift pressure into my right foot at the top. Now, always when we're talking pressure shifts, I mean pressure in my foot, not my mass of my body going drastically to the right. So I do want to shift pressure to the right, and I prefer it to happen pretty early during the takeaway phase. So if I'm 50-50, I'm going from 50-50 to 60-40 into my left pretty quick, and then I'm going even more, maybe 70-80 into my right foot at the top of the backswing. So it really happens early, and it happens progressively through the entire backswing. So if I just hit one with that first, I take my normal setup, I'm 50-50, I'm feeling 60-40 during my takeaway, and then about 80-20 at the top. Now notice, again, not a huge mass shift. Always as a checkpoint when I'm doing this, if there's a rod or a wall just outside of my right hip, I'm trying to not go past that line. So really that's going to be the first part that I'm looking at, is going to be I'm starting 50-50, 60-40 into my right in the first foot, and then about 80-20. So let's go ahead and do that one, part number one. And so that's really the pressure part in my foot in terms of towards or away from the target. Now keep in mind, this is a feels video. So if you're someone that records yourself and you have a tendency to shift too far to the right, are you gonna feel like you wanna keep shifting to the right? No, right? Whatever your issue is, you've gotta feel the opposite. That's where you record your swing and find a coach to work with. If you're someone who shifts really far to the left, you may have to feel even more to the right than what I'm suggesting. Keep that in mind when we're talking about feel videos. So that would be part number one, 60-40 and about 80-20, keeping the hip inside the line here. We'll get to that a little later. Part two with the feet as we work our way up is in terms of toes or heels. when I take my setup position, I'd like the pressure in my feet to be basically on the balls of my feet. That means kind of where the edge of my shoelaces are, where my toes meet the base of my foot. That's where my pressure is. I don't start out on my toes. I don't start back in the heels. I'm kind of just forward of middle. Now, when I make a backswing, I want that pressure to be shifting slightly back to the right or towards my heel behind me. How far back should you feel really depends on where you're coming from. Let's say as a good checkpoint, let's assume kind of my kneecaps are over balls of the feet, pressure in the balls of the feet. I'm really moving it from the balls of the feet towards the middle of my foot, or maybe just at the start of the heel. I'm not gonna move it back into my heel to the point where I get my toes off the ground, but I am gonna move it a little bit back into my heel. So that would be part number two. I'm shifting a little to the right, and I'm also shifting my pressure a little bit more towards my right heel. Let's go ahead and hit one with that. And that would be feel number two in terms of what your right feet do. Now, one more thing before we talk about the hip, the right hip, is how you shift your pressure in terms of toes or heels in your right foot will influence the amount of hip turn you can have, right, or pelvis rotation. Meaning, when I make my backswing, the more that I go towards my toes with my pressure, the less that I'm gonna turn my hips, which then usually leads to the less I turn my hips, the more vertical I'm gonna be, lack of depth, typically not good things. The more I go towards my right heel, the easier it is to turn my pelvis, the more depth I'm gonna have with my backswing, typically good things with that. So if you're looking for more hip turn, you wanna go more in towards your heel. If you're some reason you have way too much hip turn, whatever that would be, you would be feeling maybe a little bit more towards your toes, right? If you're someone who has a huge hip turn and you hit hooks, you might feel a little more towards your toes. But that's really what we're looking for, from the balls of the feet to the middle of the foot, maybe slightly back towards the heel. That's how you want to work into the right foot during your backswing. Let's talk a little bit about the hip and leg motion. Okay, so the right leg would be the next piece up, right side during the backswing. This one's going to be pretty straightforward and simple. When I start at address, my knees are bent. My right leg is bent. My kneecap should be roughly over the balls of my feet, okay? Meaning it's not back here towards my heels, perfectly straight, and it's not bent over my kneecaps. It's bent over about the balls of my feet, so I've got some knee bend. During the backswing, you should have less knee bend. That means you're losing some of your bend. That means you're straightening your leg some amount. Now, everyone gets nervous when you say straightening leg. That doesn't mean you have to go locked. You can. There's some great ball strikers who go that far. Notice what happens as I extend my leg. My right hip goes back or forward. It goes back, right? It goes around, meaning as I extend my right leg and straighten my leg, it's easier for me to get more turn. If I hit a ball and I allowed my right leg to straighten and got my weight back into my right heel, that would get my right hip in the back the most, more turn. Meaning easier to turn my upper body, easier to get depth, right? Probably better for distance and hitting draws and solid contact. So let's exaggerate one, what I'm gonna feel exaggerated. Right leg all the way straight will allow my hip to turn back behind me. And that felt exaggerated to me, and that was a really nice draw I hit there with it. Now, the opposite is true. If I made a backswing and I tried to keep my right leg really bent, I can't turn my hips or my pelvis as much, which means it's gonna be harder to turn my shoulders, which means I'm probably gonna be more vertical. Can you do that? Can you play well? Of course you can. There's guys on tour who have. I would say for most of you guys watching, that would be a more difficult way to do it. So if I were to keep my right leg bent the same amount, I can't turn as much. I'll typically be a little more vertical as I do that. And I still hit that ball well, right? You can still do it from there. I hit a little bit of a fade with that. So you do want to allow your right leg to straighten some. Again, confirm these feels with video. If you're unsure, live view behind you would be great. You're gonna lose some flex. As you straighten your right leg, you can turn your hips more. If you keep your right leg bent, you can turn them the least. Those are the things you want to focus on in terms of the right leg motion. All right, so let's talk about how the right hip works in the swing. Now, I've got a little training station behind me with a bucket and an alignment rod, really just so you can see an object just to the right of my hip. This could be a rod, a wall, a bag, whatever. The idea here when I take my setup is if I start a certain distance away, you imagine a wall by my right hip, when I make my backswing, if I sway to the right or kick my hips to the right, my right hip goes to the right, that goes along with a lack of turn, and my right hip gets outside of my ankle. That means I'm gonna not turn here. What we wanna have happen is if I had a wall here, my right hip turns just inside of the wall. Now notice, let's say right now I've got about a hand here. If I have a hand there, I want just a little bit more than a hand. As my right hip turns back behind me, it's gonna create some space. Now, you'd probably rather create too much space rather than not enough for most people, but it depends on how you match this up. As a stock model, you wanna stay the same distance you started or create a little bit of space. That's what'll happen as your right hip turns back. So one really easy drill you can do here, and we talked about in our how to get rid of your sway video, is just to put a stick to the right of your hip. And you can start with it about an inch there, and make sure it's not so far forward you don't hit yourself. And you can hit some shots and make sure your right hip turns inside of that stick. And you can hit some shots with that, would be perfectly fine. So that's really how your right hip should work. You're gonna feel like your hip turns behind you. Now your right hip also is gonna have some inclination to it. So it doesn't turn down and behind you, it turns up and behind you. So as my right hip continues to turn when I go back, again, that's not gonna turn level, it's not gonna turn lower than my left hip. There is gonna be some inclination. So some players like to feel the right hip turning kind of up and behind them. Up and behind them. So you're stretching out your right side as you make your backswing. Now, the older you get and sort of the less upper body turn you can get, or the shorter the distance, if you're looking to improve distance or kind of get more of a draw pattern, I would let this right hip turn back behind you quite a bit. I'd rather you overdo that than underdo that. So that right hip's gonna go behind you and up and back on a little bit of an angle. Now, it goes on that angle and slants because you're allowing your right leg to straighten. As your left leg bends a little and your right leg straightens, that's what tilts your pelvis there. So you can allow that right leg to straighten, allow that right hip to get behind you, and that's gonna help you get more turn on the way back and increases the odds of you turning the ball over, get a little bit right to left draw. So we've got a little shift into the right foot. We wanna go more back towards the heel. Let the leg lengthen and let your right hip turn up and behind you. Now let's talk a little bit about how the torso, chest, and shoulder work. Okay, so as we start to work up our body, everything relative to my upper body, right, my chest, my rib cage, and my shoulders is really all gonna be about the turn and the tilt. So what we're looking for our upper body to do during the backswing is turn, and it's got a tilt, which means our right side needs to go back behind us. That includes our rib cage, right, our chest, pec, shoulder, needs to go back behind us, but it also needs to tilt. So I don't want to do that and just turn level with everything. It's got to have a little bit of tilt to it as I go back. So my rib cage is going to feel behind me and up. My chest is going to feel behind me and up towards the camera behind me. And my shoulder is going to feel behind me and up. And you can feel any one of those. So let's do the rib cage motion. I'm going to feel my rib cage working up and back, like I'm lengthening out, getting that as far away from the golf ball as I possibly can. Let's go ahead and do one of those, rib cage up and back. And that's going to help increase my turn on the way back. That's option one. You can also feel the chest, right? And now again, these are just a lot of different ways to do the same thing. My chest can feel like it works up and behind me. So I'm pointing that back towards the camera behind me. Chest up and back will help increase turn on the way back. And that's another way to get your upper body turned more. Again, the benefits, I hit that one really good. The benefits of that being increased swing length, increased depth, which would lead to more distance, right? And less likelihood of a slice. Now my right shoulder can do the same thing. My right shoulder from here is gonna feel like it goes up and back behind me. You can even retract your shoulder blade behind you, so long as you keep your arm in front of you, it doesn't get too far back. So right shoulder up and back away is another feel. And that's another feel that I can use to be able to do the same thing. So that's a lot on the right side, but that's what this video is about. That's the foot, that's the leg, that's the hip, that's the upper body. The two main take-homes are, you've got to feel things that turn, you got to feel things that tilt. And as you turn and tilt, as we're doing those things, there's going to be a little bit of a pressure shift along with it. So that's really the simplest version of this. Feel you turning behind you. Let your leg and your upper body lengthen so you have some tilt, left shoulder lower than your right, and allow a little bit of pressure into your right foot. Now the goal of these feels video is to go along with whatever you're working on. Certainly, you're not gonna hit a ball and think, okay, pressure in the right foot, let my hip go back, lengthen my leg, make sure I have tilt, let my shoulder, right, you're not thinking about all that at one time. You're picking one or two things here if you're someone who needs to turn more, see which one you like best, supplement it with video so you know what you're actually doing. And of course, as always, if you guys want any help with this, we'd love to help you at CogornoGolf.com, guide you through the process. If you do have any questions, leave a comment down below. Hey guys, thanks for watching today's video. If you liked the video, do us a favor, click the like button down below. Click the notification bell. Also, please subscribe. Thank you guys for watching.